welcome to the EFN Presents review of Season 4, Episode 18, Mod Pie. Joining me today, we have BVids.
Hi.
And Kiniro.
Why, hello there.
Thanks for joining us today. So we have yet another premiere episode for a writer on Season 4. This episode by Noel Benvenuti?
Benghazi.
Noel Benvenuti. So just starting on that point, because a lot of the main six were present here, we definitely had a big focus on Pinkie Pie and an introduction to a new character in her family. What did you guys think of the characterization of the main six in this episode and the work of a new writer in general?
So I thought that they were really relatable because I've been in this situation before where, you have friends, they have mutual friends, but you try to establish a link between worlds, more or less, between their friendship and then creating a new friendship with you, and there's just this disconnect. Maybe they're friends for different reasons, but you don't see eye to eye. It becomes difficult to try to establish any kind of relationship with these new people, but you want to try because you're friends with a mutual friend. You all want to be friends, but it doesn't work out all the time.
And kind of to tack on with what BVids said, it's not just about bringing your mutual friends together to be one big group of friends. Also, at least the way it relates to me, or made it very relatable, is that it's trying to get your friends to approve of your siblings and then your siblings to approve of your friends, to kind of bring them all together. That's where there's a huge disconnect, even more so than just a couple of friends just across the board, because you have your relationship with your sibling, your family member, what have you, for different reasons than you have your relationship with your friends. And then you're trying to bring them all together, and then it's just, whether it's awkward, it's not doable. It kind of is what it is, but that's where the huge disconnect is. At least that's where it's very relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family.
It kind of felt like a friend indeed, in that you may have had a friendship develop of sorts, but it's not like the friendship that the main six share.
Well, I mean, it comes off as very realistic in the sense that this kind of scenario does play out, and it's not a perfect world where everyone's just friends with one another. It more or less shows that you need to more or less build up to a good friendship. It doesn't just happen right away. You have to find common interests. You have to realize why you would want to be friends with one another, and from there you build on that friendship.
Finding reasons that you want to be friends, that's something I think really stuck out to me in this episode, because the main six, Twilight especially, they have these rules about friendship, or they have these lessons about friendship pretty internalized. Twilight's, in a lot of cases, the voice of reason, saying, well, maybe we need to give her another chance, or maybe meeting all six of us at once is too much for her, maybe we need to try to be friends with her individually, and they do that. So they're trying. They're not just jumping to conclusions, but they still make some pretty fundamental errors. One of the things that really stuck out to me is they're trying to get Maud interested in what they like to do, as opposed to trying to find any common ground.
They almost feel boxed in because the only interest they see coming out from Maud is that she's interested in rocks, but they don't really ever try to further that interest. You hear Rainbow say, how do I know anything about igneous rocks? Don't ask me. More or less like it's being forced on them rather than they're trying to find something interesting about rocks or something they can talk about that she would be more interested in. It's more or less like, this is what we're interested in. Oh, she's not interested in that, and we can't be friends.
Yeah, Dash, especially when she's saying, Maud's riddle wrapped in etc., wrapped in igneous. It's a type of rock, guess how I know that? She's showing disdain for what Maud likes to do. And yet they say, well, we've been trying to get closer to Maud. No, they haven't. They haven't been trying to get common ground. There is something right out there that they can make an effort to try to reach out to Maud, but they never really do that.
Yeah.
Or perhaps that since Maud isn't being very responsive to other suggestions, or at least in their eyes isn't open to suggestions, they don't know how to approach the situation.
That's true, but Maud seems like a very, I don't want to say reserved, well, she is. She's a very reserved type of person. She definitely conflicts with the personalities of the main six, and especially Pinkie. But I mean, that's a basis of a lot of the jokes in this episode, isn't it? That she's nothing like Pinkie is, and it's almost the joke in and of itself.
There's several things that I liked also, though, about how they handled that aspect of the whole friendship not working out, was that the main six continually tried to not dismiss Maud right off and say it's impossible to be friends. They kept trying, at least. to a certain point. And I like the fact that when Pinky showed that she was just distraught and saddened because her friends couldn't become friends with her sister, she didn't just give up. It seemed like there wasn't an end to how they were trying to bond with one another. It seemed like they continually were trying to bond with one another, even though continually it was being shot down.
Yeah, and even though they were constantly being shot down, or it was failing, or it just wasn't working, they all kept trying on the behalf of their friend and sister, Pinkie Pie. And that's where you see that lesson come at the end of the episode, that they all kept trying to do this because of their love for Pinkie Pie. And that's why they kept trying to get along with each other. Not that they weren't, but they just weren't finding that common ground, that common interest.
Well, regarding Maud's character, because she's a new character, I've already seen a number of people complaining that she was over the top as far as a very flat, blunted affect. And in some ways, that's just the joke, is that you expect Pinky's family to be like her, but we already know they're rock farmers. But I really think that there really needs to be that disconnect between everybody else in the episode, the personalities of all of the main six. For that lesson to really come through, there really could be no hope of them becoming friends. No, nothing is going to click with this character, right? Because that's what the lesson hinges on, in a way, is that, okay, not everybody can be friends, but you can still have that, I don't know, because they do become friends, sort of, in a way. But
well, they couldn't have had the story be where, like, say, 3 of the main 6 didn't get along with Maud, but some others did. It wouldn't have come home as strong if the story was more or less not all-encompassing for all of the main 6 to just not become friends with Maud early on. It was more or less to just show that there is common ground that can be found. You just need to search for it and don't give up on friendships that seem hopeless at the beginning. There are ways to establish a friendship. You just need to find the way to do it. You need to find that common ground, or you need to find something that you can bond with.
Yeah.
But do you think the character was over the top? Do you think the character was annoying, I guess? Because if they hadn't made any jokes around it, I could see it really getting tiresome, boring to watch by the end of the episode. But I'm pretty sure they're aware of that, because everything in the episode almost hinges on a joke around how bland she is, or be surprised by when she throws the rock when they're talking to Dash. But her introduction is, I think, a testament to that, because they're showing right there the contrast between Pinky and Maud, and they don't just do it quickly. They have, Pinky's bounding down the path, and then they have a wide shot with the main 6 way over on one side, Maud slowly making her way from the other. They could have done that a number of other ways, but they did that in a way, I think, that is trying to derive some comedy from just how bland she is.
If you look at it, she is the exact antithesis of Pinkie Pie, not being friendly, but just personality-wise. Pinkie Pie is this over-the-top spastic, and Maud is this very down-to-earth, grounded, very bland character.
Yeah. I would have to say that I actually really liked Maud's character, because I felt like the comedy worked really well with what was happening. The rock jokes, even though rock jokes are just rock jokes, they're not going to be that funny, I thought it was really just kind of hilarious to see how these characters played off of her very dry and very bland kind of reaction to anything they were trying to do to impress her or try to get a reaction from her. So it just came across as something different from what I've seen in the show, because a lot of the times it's, everyone's so charismatic and very, expressive with how they react. It's cool to see a little bit of a change in that with a character that's completely a 180 of that, and just how these characters then play off of that, being shut down and this dry reaction. I just love seeing that.
They're so off-put. They don't know how to react to it, right? When she's talking about games that she plays with her pet rock, she says, we play camouflage. It's like hide and seek, except way more intense. And she just has this completely lethargic tone and an expression to match. I don't think they know what to make of her.
Well, even with the ending where she's like, sure, that's her reaction to, we can be friends, like, we all have a love for Pinkie Pie, and this is our common ground, and would you want to be friends with us? And she just goes, sure. And they're taken back by that, even at the end. Even after all this time of getting to know Maud's character, they're still taken back by how she reacts to things.
They shouldn't have changed her character, because becoming friends doesn't mean changing who somebody is.
Exactly.
With the conflict of this episode, nobody is being bad. Pinky isn't being over the top. Pinky's being Pinky. If she seems a little excited, yes, she's excited about her sister, she's excited about her friends, and she wants them to be friends. She wants them to feel about each other the way that she feels about them. Maud is just being herself. The main six are being themselves. They're all making an effort, but it's just who they are. Maud isn't going to get excited, and the main six aren't going to like Rox, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with how the characters go about what they do, because being friends doesn't necessarily mean changing who you are.
Yeah, Maud actually, it's like stated at the end, she hated candy. So I'm just feeling like the whole reason that she even did the recipe and learned to make the rock candy and all that stuff was just to make Pinkie Pie happy. I feel like that's her character, is a very giving and very protective family member, but it's like very reserved and kind of hidden. You don't see these attributes until they're needed.
Exactly. And that was kind of an interesting throwback because, at the beginning of this episode, you see Pinkie Pie. Oh yeah, my sister showed me how to make this awesome rock candy necklaces, and it was so fun and awesome and great. And then at the end of the episode, the whole point of her even going through the motions to teach her how to do that back when they were younger was just because it made her happy. She wanted to make her sister happy more than anything else, even though it wasn't really her thing. But she kept all of them and didn't really eat them because it's sentimental for her, because this is the time I spent with my sister and got to do these awesome things.
Yeah, and even though she didn't like the candy, she still kept the necklaces as a reminder for what they'd been through and their bond of one another.
Yeah, I think that scene and the smile when she's talking about Pinkie at the end are really telling about her character, and especially that even through the entire episode and her always talking about rocks and that she has a pet rock and that this is an igneous rock and that she likes to play hide and seek with her rock and that this doesn't have enough rocks. And you think you know so much about the character, you think that there's nothing else to the character, but you know nothing about her. And I think that that's a big thing, is that if someone isn't bombastic and all that, even if they are, external appearances don't really give you an insight into who somebody is, just what they do. You can see Dash is competitive, but you don't really know too much about her character if you were to see somebody doing that. Maybe their motivations for wanting to win or everything like that. There's things about people you can't see. And if you focus on the externalization of someone's personality, you can completely misjudge who they are.
It's very true.
But it's like at the end, like you were saying before, when they're surprised that she's not all of a sudden excited because, yeah, we have this common ground and we're going to be friends and all this stuff. But that's not who she is. But that doesn't mean that how she feels about people or what she feels about something is different. It's not that she's disinterested or anything like that.
That's just her MO. That's her way of reacting toward it. Not that she's not excited, but that's her way of showing that, hey, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, which I think that ties into the fact that we don't see Maud's cutie mark in this episode. And I know there's some people speculating on what it should be, or it should be this, or obviously it's going to be something rock related. The cutie mark has to do with their special talent. It's something that's very fundamental to a character. And I'd pose the question to you guys, what is the fundamental character trait about Maud?
I think it might have to be that she's pretty selfless. She's willing to put her life on the line to protect her family. I mean, that's one attribute of her, but if you're going to be blatant, you could say that it has to do with her love of rocks and her upbringing.
Her eccentricity with rocks, her upbringing, her blandness. But if we're going to go with what her special talent is, I'd kind of say being able to destroy an entire boulder in one go. So her cutie mark should be a jackhammer.
That's true. She's going off on a rock researching trip at the end, isn't she?
Yeah, she is. So as far as we know, maybe her entire special talent isn't necessarily breaking apart rocks, but maybe knowing a lot about them. Maybe she's a geologist for all we know.
But if she's still on the rock farm, going back to what you said, Kiniro, would being able to destroy a rock really necessarily be a special talent? It could just be that she's been doing it for so long that you can become efficient at things that you don't necessarily want to do, that's not your calling in life, simply because you have done them so much.
Well, I mean, you could use the same sort of scenario for Applejack and why she has apples as her cutie mark. I mean, she's been surrounded by them her whole life. You know that she's good at bucking apples and more or less harvesting apples. It kind of goes with her character. I mean, she's got more characterization than just she's just an apple farmer and all those things, but with Maud, I feel like the same thing goes along with it. She's got a lot of character behind her, but maybe her special talent just has to involve rocks.
Yeah. Well, with Applejack, it was when she was in Manhattan that she realized she didn't fit in there and her calling was really back on the farm, that that was where she was happy and that's what she needed to do. So I think that in that respect, you can't just say, well, she's on the farm, therefore her cutie mark is apple related. It ended up being that's what she was meant to do. But for Maud, Pinky wasn't destined to be a rock farmer. Pinky didn't leave the farm and say, oh, I really miss the farm. So in that respect, all we can really go off of, other than her attitudes towards her family, which is reasonable, obviously we have strong connections to family, what other than very external factors can we base our judgment of Maud's character on? It's like with the main six. We're making assumptions about her character based on what we see, but we don't really know her. And so are we really fit to judge, I guess, what her cutie mark should be? We can speculate, but we could be completely wrong, just like the main six were wrong.
Yeah.
So I kind of like that that's hidden there. Is that there's more to Maud than we see, right? It's that simple. There's more to her than we see.
It's really up to the writers what they want to do. If they want to put a fish as their cutie mark, they can do that. But I'm saying, from what we've seen, we know that she's definitely interested in rock. She's going to rock school, or she's going to go get her degree in rock science. So, I mean, she's older than Pinky. She's at an age where she should know what she wants to do with her life. I feel like everything is pointing towards one direction of her life or where it's going. But yeah, it could be a red herring, and it's just to throw you off. And in the end, she's passionate about something else completely, and you just don't know. They did hint at the beginning that she has an interest that each of the main six can get along with. Like, oh, she's honest, she has a pet, she, likes dresses, or she likes fashion. Yes, she has these interests, but none of them are blatantly glaring out there as much as the rock obsession and the more or less fixation.
If I may, one of the biggest ones is, especially with the, when Pinky's saying, oh yeah, she's honest, she likes books and poetry and fashion and what have you, doesn't necessarily say that she didn't like any of that stuff or she couldn't relate. I mean, one key example was right when she arrived and Rarity says, oh, so you're such a fashionista. That's kind of cool. Expression, blah, 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 blah. And then the whole joke of, your dress talks, what does it say? And of course you get the deadpan response of, it's a dress, it doesn't talk. But that doesn't mean that she doesn't like fashion. She's just being overly literal.
Right.
So as far as we know, maybe she does have a huge, I wouldn't say obsession, but has a huge interest in fashion, but just not to the same level that Rarity does.
Well, in a way, I think it was Pinky trying to get the main six excited about her sister and say, oh no, you guys have so much common ground. But in a way, it's also the main six expecting her interests to be just like theirs. Maud says she's into expressing herself through her wardrobe, which she does. She just doesn't express the same things that Rarity does. And that's where, all of a sudden, for Rarity, there's no longer that connection, even though they are doing the same things.
Right, and you can see also that Rarity in the Diamond Dog episodes is like, she's looking for jewels, she has a jewel finding spell that she's been using, and she taught Twilight, and she has these things that are part of her characterization, but they all seem to more or less tie back into her love of fashion. Like, she's searching for the gems because she's trying to make a dress. So it's even though she has these other interests, I think the glaring main interest, or like the calling in life, the cutie mark, all those things, that is very obvious. So I feel with Maud, it almost becomes obvious that rock farming, or at least obsession in rocks, is her main calling, and these other things kind of orbit around it.
Yeah.
I mean, all of her poetry is about rocks. She probably schooled Rainbow Dash on rocks. I mean, it just seems obvious that everything she's doing is trying to orbit around this obsession with rocks.
Well, talking about Dash, that's another connection, I guess, that it seems that characters could be forming, but they don't, because the main six's expectations are not what they find. And that's where Dash is throwing the rock and Maud throws it completely over their horizon. You get this nuclear cloud going off. And Dash is excited, but then loses all interest when Maud's like, oh, I'm not really into winning. Like, I'm sorry, did she not just throw a boulder into the other county, right? Do you think that would impress Dash more than it does? To give up relatively quickly as soon as it became evident Maud wasn't into competing.
Well, see, that's where I found Rainbow Dash was a little bit out of character, honestly. Even though she wasn't into competing, the fact of what she did was pretty amazing. And yeah, Rainbow Dash found this kind of exciting and actually was ecstatic about it. But as soon as, I don't like competing, and she just jaw drop, I'm no longer interested. That kind of seemed out of character because to Rainbow Dash, why care about competing? That was just awesome. Who cares? That was amazing. But she gives up?
To be honest, though, I don't feel like she gave up on Maud because she says, I don't like competing. She was just taken aback by the fact that she has this talent to throw a rock into the next county and cause this explosion, but she doesn't care about it at all. She just more or less blows it off like, well, this is something I know how to do, but I don't really care. And Rainbow Dash was just really surprised. I don't think she was like, oh, I don't find Maud interesting. She's just kind of like, she's mysterious. There's something weird about her. She has this talent, but she chooses not to use it because she's not interested in competing like me. So I don't know if it was like she just automatically didn't like Maud because she didn't like competing. I thought it was more like she was surprised that Maud would take that route rather than say like, oh yeah, I'm a championship rock thrower 5 years running.
Well, is that a failure of the writing then, that they just abandon that scene as soon as, I guess, the joke's over? They make a joke, oh, I'm not really into competing. Dash is like, oh my god, what? And then they continue.
I think the joke and the scene served its purpose, which was just to show that each of the main six are failing to bond with her even on a personal level, because the whole thing was that, hey, well, maybe if we separate and get to know her on a personal level with just one-on-one, maybe it'll work out. And then, you know, each scene was more or less just to establish that it's not working out even on a one-on-one level. They just can't relate.
But you were just saying it didn't, because we know what was that May the Best Pet win. Rainbow Dash likes coolness, awesomeness, and radicalness. I'm sorry, that throw was pretty awesome. So how did Rainbow Dash fail to bond with Maud?
It wasn't that she didn't see that it was cool, because even after it happened, she was like, how did you do that? She was really interested in it. I don't think it was that she just wasn't interested in Maud. It's just that she couldn't relate on a level of their personalities. More or less, yes, she has this ability to do this, and it's cool to Rainbow Dash, but that doesn't mean that they're going to be friends because they can't relate on that level. If she had this ability and she was willing to compete against Rainbow Dash, she could relate to that, but she can't relate to the fact that she can throw rocks, and she has an ability to do that.
It's also the fact that she's super modest with it, and she's just like, yeah, no, whatever, kinda. And she's not a show-off. So there's the other point of where they don't see eye to eye on.
Yeah, I mean, like, Dash and Applejack kind of have a little bit of a tense relationship sometimes, but they understand one another on a competitive level and also on a personal level. I feel like Maud didn't fulfill that sort of thing. Like, it was a new friendship, and she couldn't establish this link between them. Other than the fact that she just had the ability to do something, she didn't show, though, that she was interested in doing it. She was just doing it because she was told to.
So not only is Maud not interested in the competitive aspect, she wasn't excited or interested in what they were doing. She was just like, okay, we're throwing rocks, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I can see that. But I guess that comes back to, this is a new writer. Overall, what did you guys think of how the characters were written? Do you think that that was true to how we've seen them in other episodes in season 4 and, previous seasons?
I didn't find any of their reactions out of character, with the exception of, at least personally, for what Rainbow Dash did earlier. But other than that, they kind of went hand in hand with how they've been established so far. I think the best thing is they just don't know how to react to another character coming in who's very bland, that they can't relate to. And I think they actually portrayed the main six quite well.
I was just going to say, I thought that they did a good job keeping the characterizations true to more or less what season 1 and 2 and 3 had established for who they are. And they reacted accordingly. I feel like Applejack was blunt and honest about what her feelings were. I felt like Twilight took the leadership role and more or less guided her friends along with, not giving up on trying to become friends with Maud. And Fluttershy was shy after, I'm not going to say that's her only role, but, she was shy and kind to the animals throughout the episode. I mean, you could see her kindness coming through, and through all of the characterizations, you could see them trying, and they were fulfilling their characterizations truthfully. Like, they weren't out of character because it was a new writer.
Yeah, they were excited about what we would expect them to be passionate about, but when it came to deal with Maud, they were all a little off-put, I guess. Yeah, they didn't know what to make of her, but that's true because it's a situation that's new to them. Pinky aside, Pinky had to deal with cranky in A Friend Indeed, but even in that, it was trying to make friends with someone who didn't want to be friends as opposed to trying to be friends with somebody for the sake of somebody else. There are different situations there.
True.
Yeah.
I did have something to say, though, is that Rarity was wearing Pharrell Williams' hat the whole time in the beginning, and I just lost it every time I saw that.
Oh, wait, who's that?
Pharrell Williams, the guy who's, he was like the singer with Daft Punk on its Get Lucky and all that. He had this cowboy hat that he wore throughout the Grammys that has become insanely popular, and he keeps wearing it around, and it looks exactly like Rarity's hat.
Is it adorned with countless gems the size of muffins?
No.
Now all you gotta do is just bedazzle that and you have Rarity's hat.
Yes.
Well, there were a lot of little jokes and whatnot throughout the episode. Was there one in particular that really stuck out to you?
I guess it was the pet rock was really hilarious to me.
You could see it coming, right?
Well, I could see it coming, but it was just the reactions just from them, because that was more or less their first attempt to try to, I think, establish a link between them, because they're like, oh, we heard you have a pet. We all have pets. And then she was like, yeah, I do. And then she just throws the rock on the ground. She's like, this is my pet rock, Boulder. And then they're just so taken back by that because they find it so odd and they don't know how to react. And it is one of the first jokes that I saw in the episode that I just laughed a lot.
You can't even say anything about the rock. It's not even an interesting rock. If it had been special in some way, they could have been, oh, wow, where did you find that? But it's literally just, it's as bland as she is.
Well, yeah, because even Fluttershy's like, I wish I spent more time with Boulder because I forget kind of what he looks like. He's so inconspicuous, he's so bland that they don't know what to really look for when they're playing Chameleon.
Maybe that's why Boulder's such a good pet for Maud. They're just like each other.
And props to the person who came up with the pet rock idea, because that's a throwback to the 80s. Very nice there.
Low maintenance, no feeding, no walking.
A number of the rock jokes or rock references were fairly bland, but you also got to the completely ridiculous ones, like when they're making cider, where she's attempting to peel an apple with a giant rock and just crushes it.
Yeah, no, I found the rock humor funny. Like, I knew what I was in for when I saw the first rock joke. I was like, oh, they're going to keep making rock jokes because that's what Maud's all about.
Honestly, I thought it was rocky at best.
That's terrible.
I'll see myself out.
Yeah.
No, but in all honesty, I did kind of appreciate the deadpan humor, especially with all the rocks references that you can actually see some of Maud's character come a little bit out. And I think that's what really did it for me, is just the deadpan wit that made it over the top funny. Just because you saw this character be so serious and not funny, but seeing everyone else's reactions toward this, just trying to gauge it. And that's what made it humorous. That's what made it for me.
It's not just the rock references either. I mean, if you just look at the outfits that Pinky concocted for that obstacle course, Cheesehead makes a comeback. You can just freeze frame on that. You've got Geordi's visor from Star Trek.
If only Maud worked at a Hard Rock Cafe.
Oh my god.
That was bad.
That was pretty bad. Oh yeah, some of the best jokes with Maud have nothing to do with rocks. Like when she goes to save Pinky and she just grabs that one costume. The, what type of helmet is that?
Hold on, let me get the proper pronunciation of this. Pickelhaube.
Pickelhaube.
The only other thing I say is that sad Pinkie Pie was a little too much.
That's rough, but I think it goes...
Soul crushing.
It goes back to how much the main six and Maud were legitimately trying to make this work, because Maud was doing it in her own way, but she wasn't just outright saying this isn't going to work. She was trying for her sister because she legitimately cares about her sister. We know that. And that's what they were trying to prevent, was Pinky's feelings being hurt. But it goes back to the main six and just how they've really internalized a lot of these friendship lessons, that they thought it out. It's like, well, do we tell Pinky the truth? Well, we have to, because isn't she going to find out anyway? And then we've lied to her. But certainly the line, I'll just be in here figuring out what to do with 2 tons of rock candy, certainly emphasizes how kind of foolish she must feel for how excited she was for this, how she built it up so much. And now she's in this situation and she just feels ridiculous.
Seeing Pinkie Pie getting that sad just emotion, it's just like, I can't. It's too sad to see, because she puts on this super depressing aura around herself every time she gets that way, and it's just like, you can't help but just feel super bad seeing it.
Well, it just contrasts so much to her attitude throughout the rest of the episode. And I think that's really the point. To have the impact, you need the characters to kind of go to these extremes. Well, it's about time for final thoughts and scores. So, Kiniro, do you want to just sum up your thoughts on this episode?
Sure. It was really relatable. The fact of trying to bring two groups of friends, family, what have you together and not seeing it work, it's very hard to home. And so it did reach a little bit of a personal level, but at the same time, seeing the deadpan humor, the obvious reactions of how everyone else would react to Maud, as far as her being very monotone, very mellow, very, I wouldn't say not caring, but lethargic in some extent. That's what really made it. And the over-obsession with rocks, even though the character was very on the lower spectrum of emotional, but still have this obsession with rocks, was kind of humorous in its own way. But to see it play out with the reactions of everyone else, I think that's what did it so very comedic, and I did thoroughly enjoy it. Probably not my best episode for the season, but I did enjoy it a lot.
Yeah, my sentiments exactly. Okay, I'll stop with the rock puns. No, I mean, I really liked the episode because I just feel like I stated earlier, it just did really well with taking characters that are so used to just everyone being so expressive and so animated, and then taking this character who is the direct opposite of that and seeing how they play off of it. The jokes were well executed, and that the characterization of each of the main six was done true to their characters, true to who they are. And I felt like, yeah, the lesson was just very well done in the end, and how it shows that even though these characters don't necessarily have a lot in common, they could find common ground eventually, because they looked towards why they have this mutual friend, why do they love this mutual friend, and how they can bond over that. So I feel like that was executed really well, and just the message rang true for me. It was just something I really enjoyed.
Well, this episode says a lot about how we deal with expectations and people who don't quite fit into the dynamic of our circle of friends. It's natural to think that family will take after each other, so clearly the characters were expecting someone like Pinkie Pie. When those expectations are broken, the mood is almost that something is wrong and must be remediated. This happens a lot, especially with quiet people, where often people assume that they need to break them out of their shell, or they need to get them involved or exposed to things, that clearly they can't be happy the way that they are. Now, Maud is quite hard to read, but she has fun, she enjoys things, and she loves Pinkie Pie dearly. There's nothing wrong on her end. The main six feel they need to introduce Maud to their activities to find common ground, but exposure to the things that Maud likes, which, while likely monotonous, is met at times with hostility. I can't imagine how the main six would respond to Maud reacting the same way to the things that they're showing her. Maud's not dumb. She knows what's going on, which is made clear when she decides to leave Ponyville later in the episode. And I almost think the main six should feel more ashamed of how they acted than they do. But in the end, it comes down to whether family or not, you can still care about the same people or be friends with the same people, even if you're not quite fit to be friends with each other. There's plenty to take away from this episode, a lot of it more subtle than most of the lessons in the show. I've heard concerns about rewatchability, but I'm starting to feel that this is one of those episodes that demands to be seen again to really catch everything it has to say. Well, that about wraps it up for this week. Once again, my guests were BVids.
See you guys.
And Kiniro.
Take it easy, everyone.
This has been EFN Presents. Thanks for watching.